First, I just want to start off by saying thanks to everyone here. It's always nice to see such a big turnout. It's really great to see that everyone's really interested to learn about this exciting and sometimes crazy new world of blockchain. And in particular, what we'll be talking about here, which is NFTs. And to help me talk about that, I'm joined by 3 guest speakers here, each of whom is a pioneer or an expert in their own domain, but all of which come from very, very different backgrounds. So why don't we take a minute, guys, to start, and you can each go ahead and introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about your background, how you got involved in the space, and maybe any business or project and how it's related to blockchain and NFTs. We could start with you since you're right on my left, and we'll go down the panel from there.
Hello, hello. Oh, there we go. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm wearing a shirt that says Non-fungible T-shirt. I want it to be cool, and you can't really see it. I don't know up here. Man, it's late for a panel. I'm like usually asleep by now. But so I'm Matthew Burgoyne. I'm a partner at Osler. I work out of our Calgary office. I have the pleasure of being here for the Futurist Conference and this Virgo event. It's been great so far. I'm I guess, commercial lawyer, securities lawyer. I've been practicing law in the crypto space since the summer of 2013. When I discovered Bitcoin, I was reading a news article, or it was on a website, an article on a website called Elite Daily. They were talking about the Silk Road, because at the time that was really associated with Bitcoin, unfortunately. But it piqued my interest in Bitcoin, and I read about it. Saw that not a lot of lawyers were doing anything in the space at the time, so I started writing articles and got a bit of a practice. And now I can say it's 100% of what I do is law related to cryptocurrency and blockchain. So chances are I've probably spoken to a few people in the audience tonight. I do have a lot of clients in Ontario. Yeah, I guess that's kind of how I got started. I act for several NFT platforms, whether it be NFT issuers or people engaged in an NFT-related blockchain game. I act for a stablecoin issuer, some individuals who own IP access to, or IP rights to some DeFi platforms. I act for crypto miners, crypto ATM proprietors. So I have a hand in almost every subsection of the crypto space. So I'm not going to take too long for my intro. I think I'm looking forward to talking about NFTs. As I said, I do act for a few platforms, and I do have some opinions and comments, related to NFTs and where we're going with the space. So thanks.
That's great. Thank you, Matt. And Leo, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself too?
Of course, thanks, Fabian. It's my pleasure here, and shout out to my teams, VirgoNFT teams, and it's amazing here. And yeah, I founded this VirgoNFT company back in December last year, and we were amazed by all these developments and the Web3 technology. So we've been thinking what we can build and to contribute and to participate, be a significant participants of this round. So we think about a lot of things, infrastructures, applications, and eventually we look at what we need here in Web3. We find out that there's a huge need in this utilities of NFTs. We are going to build a common playground for both users and business. So when people talk about NFTs, they always think about, for example, Adam already mentioned CryptoPunks, Bored Apes, Azuki. They are all in the forms of images, JPEGs. But I think the developments of NFT doesn't end here. There's music NFTs in the form of waves. In future, who knows, maybe different binaries, different things that that can help boost NFT. But what we find out is NFT always requires a place for utility. So we are building a platforms like acquire user with very simple actions. We're choosing move to earn. Basically, we want to acquire user easily for everybody to be able to get something and to be able to onboard to Web3. But on the infrastructure, we want to offer utilities for all different external projects who want to airdrop their NFTs, who want to promote their projects and do marketing. When we find out on Twitter, there's thousands or tens of thousands of projects every day. They're creating NFTs and they are promoting themselves. They give away like this, airdrops, but eventually they get 80% of robots. So we want to offer valuable platforms and valuable users for them to give them exposures as well as royalty. So here comes CPK Run, and we are young teams. 6 months ago, we formed the teams, and we are very efficient and very, we all, work together and in a remote ways. Our IT teams in Toronto, marketing team in Vancouver, and operation teams in UK, London. So glad to be here, and I'll pass to the next speaker.
So my name is Eric Gu, general partner of Draper Dragon. I am, according to Clay's definition, he said anyone joined crypto industry before 2017 is an OG, and I am an OG. I started like 2013. I got my first Bitcoin in 2013. It has been a really fun journey. To just cut my story short, what was interesting was I was an entrepreneur all along until early this year. Then I put my investor hat on. Now I'm a general partner of this Silicon Valley crypto venture capital fund. So before, one of the fun fact was in 2017, that was ICO hype, right? We actually experimented a little bit on non-fungible token back then, 2017. And early 2020, I think it's late 2019, I started a company in Canada. It's called Viewing Canada. So we also created an NFT marketplace 2019, pretty early, right? And I exited this company last year. So now I'm an investor. That's my introduction.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, if you got into Bitcoin in 2013, you're definitely an OG. Trust me. I wish I got in that early. But yeah, so like I said, all very different backgrounds here, which makes for some interesting discussion, I'm sure. And what we'll be talking about is NFTs, and we'll be trying to address some of the biggest questions that I'm sure everyone thinks of when they think of NFTs. So for some context, as I'm sure most people here are aware of, if not everyone, NFTs were the popular buzzword just 6 months ago. The hype was real, they were all over the social media platforms, you name it. Since then, the retail volume in the space has been on a bit of a downtrend. Again, I'm sure that's not news to anyone here. And it's partly due to the broader economic bear market, if you could call it as such. But I'm sure what everyone really wants to know is what are the implications of this bear market for NFTs in the big picture? Does the progression and the innovation in this space come to a halt along with the retail volume, or is it just as strong as ever underneath the hood? So, gentlemen, I'd like to pick your brains a little bit about this. Where do we currently stand in the NFT marketplace? And Leo, maybe I'll start with you because you are the founder, like you said, of a very innovative NFT project. So tell us a little bit about Hibiki Run and what it aims to do, what you guys have been doing during this bear market, and why people should be interested despite the current downtrend in NFT volume.
Sounds good. I will share my humble opinions on this. I think NFT just need a new narrative. It has a very unique way to present itself. For example, when you purchase an NFT, you're not just purchasing an image or the effort of the image. When designer, independent artists draw it, you're purchasing a social status. So in that aspect, it's not replaceable. On blockchain, you can verify ownership and you are purchasing a social status. You are representing yourself in front of people. So that's the part that makes NFT is so valuable. I think what NFT is missing right now is, other than this specific social status, it requires how the way you present it. I know that Twitter right now they give you a different ways of presenting your NFT. You can make it your avatar, make it a different shape. For example, the triangles and you know that's an indicator, right? But eventually, NFT still needs a different utility. It needs to be used to be able to use in different applications. I've seen game projects, WEBB. There's a lot of NFT projects, for example, Lava Labs. They transform their NFTs into the game assets or game avatar. So that's part of the way it's trying to evolve, right? So there's still a lot of great potentials in NFT. I don't think it's dying. I think right now it's a perfect opportunity for projects to start building, think about how to make this NFT more utilized. Also, NFT can also be, like I mentioned, in the form of binaries, musics, and I'm seeing that music is going to be a big trend in NFT as well, compared to Web 2. Web3 music right now only takes, I think, 10% of what market value the Web 2 has. I think it's a great potential in the future. I think what Hibiki Run uniquely offers for NFT is it actually opens the markets. It offers opportunities for external projects, whether you're an independent artist or you're a small team just trying to launch your NFT. There's a place for you to get attention from real users. On the other hand, the users, instead of using an app for investment purpose, they can just make it fun. Just move and listen. That's their basic activities. But they can also acquire, obtain some NFTs in our Ruffle machines, by offering this hard work. For example, you run every day, you walk every day. So that's a mutual benefit. I think that's what we are aiming to do. We want to open up this NFT markets, whether it's bear market or it's a bull market, it doesn't matter. It just make this app more fun for people to acquire more joy and enjoyment. And at the same time, projects can get exposures and royalties on their projects when they launch their NFTs. I think that's eventually our goal, to make it a unified or common playground for both users and projects.
Yeah, so really it's about finding the real use cases that will get people interested. And the NFT space is so early that we're kind of still all trying to experiment a little bit with it, right? We're all trying to find where exactly it fits. And that's a very interesting use case that you guys have stumbled on, actually, and something I'll be keeping an eye on personally. And in line with the topic of key trends that are underlying the space right now, Eric, from the perspective of a venture capitalist or an investor, as you say, what are some of the key trends that you see in the industry right now that you're paying attention to and think are the most important ones that are taking place at the moment?
From our fund's perspective, we actually think NFT it's gonna go a lot bigger. So we're actually looking at the tip of the iceberg level. It's very small. Current applications are pretty small. We see a lot of things. Like, to us, NFT are not painting, are not musics. NFTs are assets, right? So what are assets? They are like brand names are assets, right? These intellectual properties, maybe commercial papers are assets. So some entrepreneur came to us, say, hey, Draper Dragon, we have a project, we want to create an NFT marketplace. Okay, great. What are you guys, trading? They say, PFPs, whatever, just like Opus. I say, okay, lack of imagination, because you're looking at this. It's huge. Imagine, just one little example. Like, let's say our fund invests into one particular company, but this company hasn't go public yet. They're about to go public, but this share cannot be traded at this moment. But is it an asset? Of course it is. But how do you do it, right? Can you create an NFT out of this like 1% of the ownership of this particular company? Would that be meaningful or valuable? Yes, of course. Will you be able to create some like a marketplace for this? Or say just, can we get some cash out of it just as a collateral? That would be a lot of things, right? This is one particular area we're looking at. It also, NFT will not be there alone. I always believe NFT will be an integral part of metaverse. So metaverse will be huge. So think about this: sandbox, and the other side. I really like the name. Other side. So the apes metaverse, right? So they have the concept of virtual land. We really like this. Virtual lands. It's so easy to understand. So we believe that the virtual land and all the related industry or say business related to the virtual land. You can be a builder, right? You can be a farmer on this virtual land. It's like limitless imagination. So these two particular areas we're actually looking into at this moment.
Right. So the key underlying benefit of an NFT in your eyes is that of an asset that can be applied to many different things and give people ownership where they couldn't have it before. Right. And in that space, we touch on something very delicate, which I'm sure Matt here knows very well, which is the world of regulation. Right. Where there are assets, there are regulators trying to regulate those assets. And I know we've talked about regulation a lot in the previous two panels, but that was particularly directed at cryptocurrencies in general. So Matt, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit about how the regulatory environment might be different for NFTs in particular, or if it's the same, and maybe tell people what exactly they should keep an eye on when navigating through that space.
Sure, thank you. I like what's being said. I totally agree with my fellow panelists. I think I'm bullish on NFTs. I personally think we're in very, very early stages. Based on the number of people that call me trying to launch an NFT project, like it's not dying. It's slowly getting larger and larger. And so I am bullish on NFTs because, like what's being said, they are so versatile. I mean, we're not just talking about Bored Apes. We're not talking about art. Like there's music. I can get into it in a bit here, but like wills, real estate, any asset that's distinctive, that's unique, can be tokenized in a really interesting way that gives it a certain kind of value that you lack in other fungible crypto. I want to share something I heard on a podcast the other day. So about Web3. Web 1 is reading the internet, right? We read the internet, Web 1. Web 2, we read and we wrote, right? Like social media, we wrote posts. Web 3 is we read, write, and own. And so a fundamental part of Web 3 is that ownership component that you can get with NFTs. So it's a fascinating space. This is a regulatory minefield. Unfortunately, there's a lot of issues that come up with NFTs, and I'll just rattle off a few of them. I think the biggest one that always comes up is intellectual property and copyright. So this comes up in a few different ways. So I guess the first is, I think people are not really 100% sure what they're actually buying when they buy an NFT in terms of what rights they're granted. So you can, some marketing says that you can buy an NFT and own an asset, but if you look at the terms of service, that's not really true. So we have to be careful that the marketing is not inconsistent with the terms of service. So like copyright issues come up when, let's say an NFT is minted, an artist's work is incorporated in the asset that the NFT is pointing to, and the buyer thinks that they can buy the NFT and have rights full stop to the asset. They can do whatever they want with it. They can replicate it, they can put the image on a t-shirt, make t-shirts, sell it, put it out, use it as their avatar on LinkedIn or Twitter. that's not always the case. In fact, most NFTs that I've seen really only grant the user a limited license. So a limited license to use the asset for personal, non-commercial use. So you can, frame the NFT in a digital frame. You can keep it on your phone. You can show it to people, but you can't commercialize the underlying art that the NFT is pointing to. So that's one issue. The other issue that comes up related to IP, kind of related to the minting of an NFT, is I've seen some projects will use art that is being pirated or taken from a third party, and the person minting the NFT doesn't necessarily have legal right to use the art. And that can have a cascading set of legal consequences for subsequent buyers if the artist one day catches on and says, "Wait, I didn't authorize this." I'm going to write cease and desist letters or try to somehow secure my asset. That's definitely an issue. So it's really important when you're minting NFTs that you have the right kind of permission from the artist or creator and the appropriate terms of service. So securities law is something that was talked about a lot in one of the last panels, and that's an issue with some NFTs. So when we talk about, so first of all, I think a lot of NFTs are not securities. I think they are legitimate art. They're not securities because we've heard of the Howey test, and there's 4 components to the Howey test. But a lot of NFTs lack that expectation of profit that comes significantly from the efforts of others. So the argument is a lot of the NFTs out there that are related to art, for example, they're valuable and because they're unique. They're valuable because they're one out of a limited edition of 10. They're valuable because the art is intrinsically valuable in itself. And it's not due to the increase in value of the NFT isn't due to the efforts, significantly due to the efforts of a third party or the promoter. That's why I think, in a lot of cases, NFTs aren't securities, but sometimes they are. If we're talking about fractionalizing an NFT, if we're talking about an NFT that might derive value from something else, which is what we call a derivative in law, if the value of the NFT is significantly derived from another asset or another license or something, it can be a derivative. Maybe I'm talking too long. I'm getting a hand signal back there. Maybe that's not.
That was for me. Don't worry about it.
So I was like, cut it off.
No, you can finish off.
Gaming, gambling. So I've seen some NFT play to earn games that actually meet the definition of gaming and a lottery scheme in the criminal code. So now we're getting into criminal law, and I've given clients advice like you can't create this game of chance and run it without any restrictions or just in the way that a simple game of chance run online for profit can be gaming and can require a special license. It's called the iGaming regime now in Ontario. But that's just something to be aware of for those who are creating play-to-earn games. I think I've covered all of the big areas, but I think, mostly it's like copyright, intellectual property, securities law, maybe gambling issues, gaming issues if you're dealing with play-to-earn games. Those are the big things we look for, and we spend a lot of time drafting the terms of service carefully, and it's always different. Every platform has its own unique fact scenario. They're running their own unique project, so you can't really rip off terms of service from one place and apply it to another. That doesn't work a lot of the time. So.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, it's always, well, I personally find that the biggest barrier to entry in this space is that people are scared to dip their toes in the water because they don't know of the regulatory consequences. So yeah, it always does pay to do your due diligence and find out what rights do come with the NFT, what are granted by the artist, etc., and etc. And unfortunately, too many people don't do that and end up in a little bit of trouble because of it. So, as Robert just signaled to me, we are running short on time here. I do feel like we could talk forever about all of this stuff. But to close, I'd like you guys, if anyone has any closing thoughts, you could take 1 minute to quickly give some closing thoughts, and we'll wrap it up like that. So anyone feel free. Any last words that you would have about the NFT space?
Well,
I just want to share that I think NFT technology is still evolving. And what applications should do is to think about how to leverage the current on-chain technologies to make it more transparent for the projects. For example, there's great technologies on verifiable randomness if you do, for example, raffles or all sort of things. How to make it more easy for users or players to accept the concept of NFT. Creating more utilities for NFT for them to, without thinking how to getting it, how do they obtain the assets and onboard more, I would say audience from the big blue oceans. And there's a lot of people from Web2 that are not aware of the beauty of the blockchains and the technology itself. They think there are issues with Ponzi's, there are issues with a lot of applications, the fears of investments. I think there's a great technologies that can help leverage and ease the concerns of that. There's so many projects that's not strictly Web3, as for example Web 2, Web 2.5. There's great tools we can still leverage to help utilize NFT. And I think that's a great starting point at this bear market. Start building and start implementing. Think about how Web2 users can easily get the idea of NFTs, and that will help to build the ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. Like you pointed out, Leo, I think really if there was one big takeaway from today, it's that NFTs aren't just one thing. Too many people associate NFTs with a singular use case, like Adam had previously pointed out with Bored Apes or CryptoPunks. But really, it's so much more than that, and it's an underlying technology in a new field that can be applied to a whole host of different applications. So it really does pay to go and find what an NFT can be used for you and for your use case in particular. And with that, thank you guys for joining me here, and thank you everyone for listening. It was a great time.
Thank you guys.